Welcome to the Urban Classroom. Hi, I'm Mrs. Brooks. I'm your teacher for today in the Urban Classroom. Thank you for stopping by today so that we can learn more about U.S. history. If you do have some type of binder or notebook, I really encourage you to go get something now. You can pause the video, but have something to write notes in because we are going to cover so much information, and it will be a great way to stay organized and have all your information together. So again, go get something, even if it's just pencil and paper for today, something that you can keep notes with. So today's lesson, we're on Unit 1, Lesson 1. This is the Introduction to Human Migration. And for every lesson, I always provide an outline so that you can follow along with me. So in your notebook at this time, you should be writing ESPN, because I want to explain what the ESPN represents. We're going to talk about migration and what it means. We'll define it. We'll talk about the first people and changes to the environment. And throughout the lesson, as I'm speaking, you should be taking notes and writing your information down that you can always go back and reflect on. So let's get started with Introduction to Human Migration. This is your job. Do your job today. Scholars will be able to summarize the challenges and achievements related to migration. And the way that we're going to do this today is by summarizing information and by making connections. Now you may say, why, Ms. Brooks? Why are we doing this? Why are we learning about this? Let me tell you why. Because sometimes people just want a better life. And people leave from one location and they go to another location because they are hoping to have maybe a better job, maybe a better living, maybe a better school to go to. There's a lot of reasons why people decide to leave their home and go to another location. So if we're ever thinking about leaving and going somewhere different, we should know about migration, because there might be some problems at the new place that we're going to, or there might be problems we're trying to escape from. So by knowing a little bit about migration, we can relocate successfully, nationally, or even internationally. Here's a question that I'd like to ask you. What is history? If we're going to be spending time every day learning about history, we should know, what is history? And why do we need to learn about history? Good questions. Give you a moment to kind of think about that. What is history? Why do we need to learn about history? Well, there's several reasons. Let's talk about what history is. History is the study of the past and those past events and human interaction, how people treated each other, how people interacted with each other. Those things are very important. Now you might say, why? Why is it so important? Because knowing about history can help you feel compassion for other people. See, we don't know what other people have gone through their lifetime, but by hearing their story, we can develop some empathy for them. We can kind of understand their situation, and that helps us to become a better person. We can also become better thinkers when we begin to critically think about history, the events, the people, the time period, the rules and laws that were made at a specific time. It can help us question the world. And by questioning the world, we can also be able to avoid mistakes that were made in the past. And we can improve not only the future, but we can improve our present time by learning from history. Nobody wants to repeat the same mistakes over and over and again. That's insanity. History can also be just very interesting. There's a lot of stories, good stories about history. There's a lot of drama in history, and a lot of conflict as well. And it's just some plain out foolishness that has happened in history. But by learning about it, it can be interesting and entertaining, and it'll help us get a larger world view. So let's get into a discussion piece. Okay, we're learning about migration. To understand migration, I first want to ask you, why do we need money? Why do we need culture? Why do we need a government? Why do we even need land? So the focus is on money, people and their culture, government, and the land. When scholars are discussing information, I like to provide sentence stems, sentence starters. It's the beginning of a sentence that will help your ideas begin to flow. So, for example, we need money because we got to pay those bills. That is the way that a scholar would finish the sentence. And then maybe give some examples. For example, we have light bills that are due. We have gas bills that are due. We got to buy groceries. So money is very important for people. Okay. So the reason why I'm asking you about money, culture, the government, and the land is because these are the tools that we're going to need to be able to examine the world through the ESPN lens. Now, economic, social, political, environmental. That's what I mean when I say ESPN, not the sports channel. I'm talking about how to understand the world through the lens of economic, that's the money, social, that's the people and their culture, political, that's the government, and environmental, that is the land. For every lesson that I teach, we will always look at the historical events through the ESPN lens. Now, in this virtual classroom, we're learning about how the United States of America became the United States of America. Well, we start off as 13 small little colonies about the size of a middle school campus. And then more people are going to come to the new world. We're going to grow and become states, and then finally become the great nation that we are today, the United States of America. But it's going to take me about 9 months to explain all of that to you. But this is just an overview of what I am doing online in this virtual classroom, is helping you to understand how America became America. Now, when I start a lesson, I always like to show the scholars what you will need to learn by the end of the lesson. So I use a strategy called See, Think, and Wonder. I'll show you a collage and I'll ask you, what do you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder? So when I ask, what do you see? You're just looking at the pictures. You're making observations. Then we're going to move to a higher level of what do you think? Because as you see these pictures, you're going to start making some inferences. You're going to connect information. And then the wondering, that's asking a question, a higher level of thinking. So for example, I might ask you, what do you see? You say, well, I see a deer. Looks like I see some berries. There's some people and a map. I might ask you, well, what do you think? Well, I think those people are farming maybe, because they have some kind of animal pulling some tools, pulling some equipment. That's what I think. I think those might be some kind of weapons, maybe some kind of tools in the center. And then what do you wonder? The wonder is the question. I wonder, why are the people in an area where there seems like it's map and it's arrows going different places? Why is the man holding a knife? Why does the lady have something on top of her head? Those are the questions that I would wonder. So the strategy is called See, Think, and Wonder. And we'll use that to help us analyze information and make connections. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Migration. We're going to talk about how kings and hunter-gatherers lived in different parts of Africa. We're going to talk about the art, the farming, grains, tools, the nuts that we're eating, hunting, and also berries. So this is the information that we'll learn by the end of the lesson. Now I want you to make an inference. An inference is taking things that you know already and connecting it to new information, looking at clues. And then we're going to put it together to make an inference. Think, then talk. That's what I tell my scholars. Think, then talk. Well, based on this map, what can you infer about human life on Earth? This map is telling us something. What is this map telling us? Now, to help you get started, I have a sentence stem at the bottom. When I look at this map, I see, and then you finish the sentence. When I look at the map, I see arrows. I see a title, it says human migration. I see numbers, years. I see people, Black people. Right, so now my brain is beginning to try to make a connection. And I want to make an inference about this map. What can it tell us about human life on Earth? Well, based on this map, we can infer that human life began in Africa. And that was about 90,000 years ago, at least 90,000 years ago, because of the arrows that we're seeing and the dates that we're seeing on this map. Now, that leads us to more information. I want to teach vocabulary. Well, when I teach vocabulary, I always teach scholars with pictures. So here's this picture that you might be familiar with. In this picture, I notice, and then you're going to explain what you notice. Notice about this picture. And if I were a character in this picture, I would be thinking, and then you tell what you're thinking. So in this picture, I noticed that there are animals and they look like they're running. They're running away for something. I noticed in the background there looks like there are meteors, something coming from the sky. I also noticed that some of these animals don't even exist anymore, like the saber-toothed tiger, like the mammoth, the woolly mammoth. Well, if I were a character in this picture, I would be thinking, I gotta get out of here. It's dangerous. A meteor could just strike and just blow up the whole area. So I gotta get out of here. That's what I'd be thinking if I were a character. Well, all these pictures are triggered to help us think, because we want to focus on the word migration and what the word migration means. So when we look at migration, the definition is the movement from one place to another. Just like these animals in this picture, they're trying to move from one place to another. Now, an example of migration would be birds, how the birds fly to the south to migrate for the winter. You might see them outside flying in that V formation. Migrate, it means to move from one place to another. Also, here's a question to help us really understand migration. What are 3 good reasons why a group might choose to migrate to another country, if we're talking about moving from one place to another place? Well, some of the reasons could be for warm climate, to get more food choices, natural resources, opportunities, or to escape danger. So this is one way that I teach vocabulary, and we'll learn a lot of vocabulary words throughout each lesson. Now let's talk about the first people. According to scientists, the first humans, they came from Africa and they lived in small groups. The small groups, they would look for food. They'd have to go and look for berries to collect. They would look for nuts. They would hunt wild animals. And people would just live together in these small groups. And we call this small group of living people looking for the berries, looking for the plants, looking for nuts to eat. We call them hunter-gatherers because that is how they survive, by hunting, but also gathering food to eat. So as plants and animals became more scarce, though, that means it was kind of hard to find, people had to move on from one place to another. So about 5,000 years ago, African people became the farmers instead of hunter-gatherers. Okay, so we're starting off just following animals, looking for food, gathering that food and bringing it back to share with the rest of the people in the group. But because of scarcity, some choices had to be made and things had to change. so that people could survive. That brings us to our next topic, changes to survive. Scarcity means not having enough resources. So it became more difficult for the small African tribes to survive because of scarcity, and the climate was changing. So people began to migrate. They're moving from place to place. But when you move from place to place without a permanent home, that could be kind of dangerous. Just imagine always having to leave one area and go one area to another area. You don't have the stability that you would need. So African tribes decided that it might be better if we start developing permanent villages, a permanent place where you can take an animal and maybe fence it in so that the animal cannot leave. So if you had a cow, you can keep the cow in the place by fencing it in or tying it maybe to a tree, maybe to a post. And that way you can get the milk every day from the cow without having to go out and look for an animal to kill and bring back. Or if you do have the animal that you're going to be using for meat products, then the animal is right there. The African people also decided that they needed to grow grains. And by growing grains, they would have their food source in one location without having to go hunt and gather for different food sources. So animals like cattle, like sheep, and other animals were kept in the village area, and the people learned to work with tools. They began to make tools, make weapons out of iron. So there's some changes that have to be made so that you can survive. Now, when I'm about to end a lesson, you will see that the outline turns red. So the last topic on the outline means we have come to the end of our lesson. So I want to talk about African culture, and then I'm going to wrap up with On the Move. African culture. When we think of African culture, we can't really trust what we see on television because the picture may not be accurate. Especially if you're showing pictures of African people being uncivilized and wild and just running around. Not accurate, not a good portrayal of what life was like for Africans. And we're talking about ancient Africa. Africa had kings and queens. Africa had, well, we know that Africa is a continent, first of all. It is not a country, it's a continent. And today, I believe there's over 51 countries that make up the continent of Africa. But there are ancient cities in Africa, like Timbuktu, where people gathered. You have philosophers, you had different types of religious groups in Timbuktu. People created complicated math like geometry from Africa. Also, the people, you did have people that live in villages. They lived deep in the woods as well. You had people who were nomadic and they were hunters. You also had agriculture where people were farming. In Africa, you had people who were just really artistic, able to make masks out of wood, also make statues out of gold, even bronze. So when we think of Africa, we really have to understand that the people in Africa already had a culture. Ancient Africans had culture, and they were very advanced, very skilled in math and also with science. Now I want to do a comparison. Think about what you know about Native Americans, and we can compare it to the similarities with Africans. How are they alike? Africans and Native Americans. Now, I added a few pictures to kind of help you and give you an idea that you can compare the two. When we think of Native Americans and African people like the Bantu tribe, you will know that both groups were hunter-gatherers. They both learned how to farm. They both used tools. They both lived in small groups. They had families and they migrated. So Bantu people and Native American people have some similarities. I say, Ms. Brooks, why are we talking about Native Americans? I thought we were learning about U.S. history. Yes, we are. I'm trying to get there. So the reason why we're talking about the Native Americans and ancient Africans, because both of these groups started off as hunter-gatherers and they migrated to different parts of the world. Well, European people are going to do the same thing. Europeans, they have traveled all around the world. When we begin to understand U.S. history, we have to understand that powerful countries from Europe sent explorers to what is called the New World and also around the world because they were looking to get more land, to trade, to spread their religion, and also to start permanent settlements that will be called colonies. Well, there were many challenges that the explorers and the colonists will experience, but they survived and they're able to start families. And that is where we're going to pick up with U.S. history of how people from European countries got into their ships, went across the Atlantic Ocean over 3,000 miles, and they will settle in the New World. And we'll focus on three countries: Spain, France, and England. Again, we'll be focusing on three countries: Spain, France, and England. Now, this is what I have taught today. The lesson was about human migration, and we're trying to understand how human life began in Africa and people began to migrate. They were hunter-gatherers, but due to scarcity, lifestyles had to change so that they could survive and become farmers. But they also had their own culture, their own religious beliefs, their own languages as well. Now I'd like to take a moment to just check your understanding. I have 8 questions I'd like to ask you based on today's lesson. Question number 1. From which continent did the first humans come? Take a look at the map. Take a look at the map. From which continent did the first humans come from? The answer would be from Africa. According to scientists, the first humans came from Africa. Question number 2. People who get food by following animals, picking fruits and berries, and moving from place to place are called something. We're looking for a word. They're called something. Let the pictures help you out. They're called hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers. Question number 3. What were 3 types of foods Africans gathered to eat? Think about that. What were 3 types of food Africans gathered to eat? You could have said berries, plants, nuts. They raised sheep, they raised cows, and they hunted wild animals. Question number 4. Name 3 things African people had to learn to do in order to survive. In order to survive. 3 things. Give me a moment to think. Okay, you could have said become farmers. They had to make tools. They had to make weapons. They built permanent villages. Question number 5. What is the definition of this word? Migration. Migration. The answer to this question is migration means movement from one place to another. Movement from one place to another. Question number 6. What are the names of the 3 most powerful countries who sent explorers to the New World? I gave you the first letter to kind of help you with this answer. Well, A, B, and C. The first country would be Spain. The second country, England. And the last country would be France. Spain, England, and France. Now, why? Why do European rulers send explorers to the New World? Why are the people leaving the European countries and moving over to the New World? Well, there are a lot of reasons. Can you come up with any of them? There's a lot of reasons. You could have said to gain wealth, to gain land, to trade, to spread religion, and to build permanent settlements. Now we're on our last question for today. To understand 8th grade U.S. history, we must look at history through the ESPN lens. But what does ESPN mean? What does that mean? Do you know what that means? Think. Well, the E is for economic, for E is for political, and the N is a little bit tricky because it's an environmental. All right, so we have went through the lesson. If you got at least 6 out of 8 right, that's not bad. Great job, because you are a highly educated scholar. And if you did not get it all, you can always go back and review the video lesson. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to thank you for being a part of the Urban Classroom. This is the place where we are learning about U.S. history from the 13 original English colonies to the settling of the Western frontier after the Civil War and Reconstruction. Be sure to tune in and watch the next video. I want you to have a great day. Make it a great day. Bye, guys.